Ted Bundy, the charmer who killed. In the 1970s, America was living through one of its most turbulent decades. The Vietnam War had ended. The Watergate scandal had shaken the nation's trust. But beneath the surface, another danger was growing. It had a name: Ted Bundy. Act 1, The Mask. Ted Bundy was born on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont. To outsiders, his childhood looked ordinary. But there was a dark secret in his home. Bundy grew up believing his grandparents were his parents, and his mother was his sister. Even as a boy, Ted was charming. He was intelligent, polite, well-spoken. In college, he studied psychology. He volunteered at a suicide prevention hotline. To friends, he was the guy you could trust. To strangers, he was the man you might lend a helping hand. But that was the mask. Behind it was a predator. To the first murders in early 1974. Young women began vanishing in Washington state. They were all similar, attractive, long hair parted in the middle. Witnesses described seeing them with a handsome man. A man with his arm in a sling or his leg in a cast. A man who said his name was Ted. He would ask for help carrying books or loading a sailboat. Once the women were close enough and the trap snapped shut, one by one they disappeared. Act 3. Across state lines. By the fall of 1974, Bundy moved to Utah for law school, and almost immediately the disappearances followed him. One woman, Carol Durant, survived. Bundy pretended to be a police officer, handcuffed her, and tried to force her into his car. She fought. She escaped. She lived to testify. But in Idaho, in Colorado, in Utah, other women weren't as lucky. Bundy's crimes were crossing state lines, and in the 1970s, police in different states rarely shared information. That gap kept him free. Act 4, The First Arrest, Weeks and Escape, August 1975. Utah police pulled over a tan Volkswagen Beetle. Inside masks, handcuffs, a crowbar, rope. Bundy was arrested for possession of burglary tools. But without enough evidence for murder, he was released. In 1977, in Colorado, Bundy was on trial for murder. Representing himself in court, he asked to use the law library. And then, he jumped from a second-story window. 6 days later, he was caught. But that wasn't the end. In December that year, Bundy squeezed through a hole in the ceiling of his jail cell. He walked right out of the building and vanished. Act 5, Florida, The Final Murders. January 15, 1978, Tallahassee, Florida. Inside the Chi Omega sorority house, 4 women slept. Bundy broke in. In a frenzy of violence, he beat and strangled Margaret Bowman and Lisa Levy. 2 other women barely survived. Less than a month later, Bundy kidnapped 12-year-old Kimberly Leach. She would become his youngest known victim. Act 6, The End of the Road. On February 15, 1978, a patrol officer stopped a stolen car. Inside was Ted Bundy, this time. There would be no escape. The Florida trials became a media circus.
Bundy smiled for heiress. He proposed marriage to a woman in court. Even then, some believed his innocence. In 1979, he was sentenced to death for the Chi Omega murders. In 1980, another death sentence for Kimberly Leach. Act 7, Confession and execution for years. Bundy denied the murders. But in the late 1980s, facing the electric chair, he began to talk. He admitted to killing more than 30 women. Investigators believed the number was far higher. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed at Florida State Prison. Outside, crowds cheered. They carried signs, "Burn Bundy, burn." Closing Ted Bundy was not the first serial killer in America. But his case forced law enforcement to rethink everything. From victim profiling to interstate cooperation, he proved that evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like a neighbor, a classmate, a man who smiles and asks for help carrying his groceries.